Today we've got what I consider to be one of the absolute funnest decks you can play in MarvelSNAP. Not only is it really fun, but it's actually super good for getting wins and can do really well on the ladder. Personally, I really love high roll decks, and I know a lot of people out there do too, so let's jump in. Let's go. Hey, Milky here, back again with another one. Today, we're jumping in and looking at a Lockjaw Pool 3 deck, which is insanely fun. It's honestly one of the funnest decks you can play in this game, at least in my opinion, but it's also incredibly consistent, as you'll see in the gameplay that we have a bit later on. Now, consistency is not something that I would definitely closely link with high roll decks, but the way this deck curves out and the turns that you have available to you with the deck, not only through the mid game, but the late game as well, just allow this deck to feel quite consistent in what it does. Look, there are a lot of variables and RNG with high roll decks in general, and this deck is no exception, but I think the way that the deck is built kind of like leans in your favor with that, and often the favorable RNG is often something that you land on. So for me, it's definitely something that has not only been super fun, but I've been able to get a lot of cubes with it and a lot of wins with it as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this Lockjaw high roll deck and take a look at the specific cards we've decided to include. All right, so this is it. This is our Lockjaw high roll deck, and there are a lot of Pool 3 cards, I will admit. So people that, are brand new to Pool 2 or just haven't unlocked some of these cards, maybe you won't be able to build this exact version of the deck. But if you do have all the cards available to you, I would definitely encourage you to build this deck. It's been something that has just done so well for me, my personal experience, and I can't recommend it highly enough. In saying that, the great thing about Lockjaw decks and high roll decks this style in general is you can often build them in so many different ways. There's lots of different inclusions that will be either personal flavor choices or things that you want to include, or just things that you've found success with that you like to include in this style of deck. So there's tons of different ways to build it. Some of the key cards, though, to include in this style of deck are definitely Lockjaw himself. Obviously, he enables that kind of high roll and risk versus reward style of play, but also Jubilee. That's a key one to include in the deck, and everyone should have access to her coming out of Pool 2. I've also got Infinite as a core card in this deck, but really that's just to cover all of the big end or the top end of the deck. Cards that are going to be very impactful late on in the game with high power, and ideally these are the cards that you're wanting to pull in with Lockjaw or Jubilee rolls. Alright, so jumping in and looking at the specific cards we've included in this version of the deck is, first up we have Wasp, and Wasp is just a great card to pair with Lockjaw. You just play Wasp for free, essentially, 0 cost onto Lockjaw, and you're able to swap that out for another card. For the most part, it's going to be something that's going to be more beneficial than Wasp. So a great card to pair with Lockjaw in general. We then have Sunspot, also a great card to pair with Lockjaw for sure, but you can also potentially play him out earlier if you're looking to fill out the early turns and you don't have Lockjaw in hand. If you don't have other plays coming up, can be a way just to get the ball rolling, so he does serve kind of two purposes in this deck for sure. Then we have Lockjaw, and for those who aren't familiar with Lockjaw, he has a great ability, which is just an ability. It's not ongoing, it's not on reveal, so he just has an ability which kind of continues on in the game, where it says when you play a card here, swap it with a card in your deck. So ideally what you want to be doing is playing Lockjaw on turn 3 as one of your strongest plays you're going to have in that case, and then slamming your cheap cards, your Wasps, your Sunspots, those kind of cards onto Lockjaw, where you can then swap it for something better. And, it is a bit of RNG, but the deck is really built around having that RNG in your favor. Another fantastic card to pair with Lockjaw, and I love this inclusion, is Thor, because Mjolnir gets shuffled in your deck, and Mjolnir is actually a 0 cost, 0 power card that buffs Thor by 6, but you can roll Mjolnir into Lockjaw late on in the game, essentially for free. And then you can buff your Thor on the other side of that as well. So a great combo card to include with Lockjaw as well. This is where one of the flavor picks for me comes in, is Dracula. And I absolutely love Dracula as a card. One of my favorite cards in the game. But also, I just love his ability to flip the game right at the end of the game after the final turn. Incredibly difficult to counter, and also very difficult to account for your opponent, as it is a bit of RNG, but you can stack this in your favor. And the deck that we've built around it does that really well. So at the end of the game, Dracula will discard a card, a random card from your hand, and then it will include that card's power on Dracula. We've got some big cards in this deck, which you can swap the power with Dracula for some really, really good cost. And being a 4 cost, I think I really like the spot that Dracula has in this deck as well. He's also not a bad card to pull from Lockjaw and have that sitting on the Lockjaw location, so that's something to consider as well. So another core card that I have in this deck, and something works so well with Lockjaw, is Jubilee. Early on in Pool 2, when you're playing Jubilee, she can be okay. She can enable a bit of high roll and do quite well in that sense. But you're always going to have the negative side of Jubilee where you've paid 4 cost, and you've got a 1 power card sitting at that location as well. The benefit of Jubilee and Lockjaw is that when you play Jubilee on a Lockjaw location, her on-reveal ability will go off, so it will swap with a card. It will play a card, sorry, to that location in the deck, and that could be one of your big cards onto that Lockjaw location. But then Jubilee will also swap herself because of Lockjaw's ability with another card in your deck. So you have 2 chances at high rolling some big cards, and in some cases, just Lockjaw into Jubilee can lock down that location for you if you do roll really well. It's just something that works really well, even better with Pool 3, and I think just takes Jubilee in this deck to the next level. We then have Jane Foster, and yet again, another flavor pick for me. I love the consistency of getting Mjolnir out from Thor when Thor's out in play. Other than that, she just serves as a bit of a body on the board, a decent pull if you're pulling into her from Lockjaw. But I really like just the synergy she has with Thor. I like including those two as a bit of a combo. Does relatively well, and I think has a decent spot in this deck. She's definitely a flavor pick though, so if you do want to swap her out for something maybe a bit more power or something a bit more disruptive, I really like Doc Ock in this spot. He can do really well. You could potentially include some other cards as well. But for me, I just like the synergy between her and Thor. Next up, we have Doctor Doom, and he is my favorite card in the game, but I also think he serves a great purpose in this deck. Often in this deck, you find yourself playing into the Lockjaw location a lot, and sometimes struggling to spread power across the board. If you do draw Doctor Doom from Lockjaw early on, he can be a great way to spread power. He can also be a solid turn 6 play in himself. So I think just Doctor Doom is a great card to include here because he doesn't just have a lot of power to a single location. He's able to spread it across the board. Chavez in there for consistency as well as a decent draw target for Lockjaw. Mainly for the consistency is the most part, but she doesn't hurt if you pull her out early as well. Magneto is one of the huge disruptive cards that comes into the game in Pool 3. Incredibly hard to play around for your opponent, can swing some late turns. You can get a lot of RNG with this deck, not only playing Lockjaw, but if you pull Magneto on Lockjaw, there's some craziness that can go on. I think for the most part, often disruption actually works in your favor because you're disrupting your opponent's plays and the kind of ways that they've played cards onto the board. So often that can go in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't. But I like the upside of having Magneto in this deck, and I think he's a fantastic inclusion here. Giganta is a massive 14 power that comes in, which is a great card to high roll into when you're pulling cards out with Lockjaw or Jubilee. Does have a downside where you can only play him into the left lane if you're playing him normally, but all of that goes away if you're able to pull into him with Lockjaw. So he's a great inclusion in this deck just for the power he brings. The final card we have in this deck, and coming in at a 6 cost 20 power card, which is the highest current base power in the game, is the Infinite. He's a great card to pull into with Jubilee or Lockjaw, but also potentially discarding him at the end of the game with Dracula. I really love the inclusion of him in this deck and makes a lot of games really exciting. And you also have the flexibility, if the play line is right, to skip that turn 5 and play him on turn 6. So something to consider as well. Alright, so that wraps us up for the deck breakdown of this high roll Lockjaw deck. Look, there are lots of Pool 3 cards in this deck, but the great thing about Lockjaw decks is they're very easy to sub in other cards that do a similar job, maybe a little bit differently, and I do think this deck steps up in Pool 3, but you can have some cards which you can include in the deck to make this style of deck work and feel pretty good as well. You know, if you've got things in there like Hulk, you could potentially include Odin in the deck, some other key cards that you might want to roll into as well. If you've got cards that you want to build out in the top end of this deck kind of more generically with your early game cards, and then tech in some cards that you want to roll into Lockjaw, it can still do very, very well. All right, we're going to go ahead and take this deck for a spin. Really excited. I love playing this deck, so stick around and see how we go. Jumping into another one here, and we have the Bifrost straight off the bat. Do have Lockjaw in hand, which is very nice. If we can draw our cycle cards, we'll be very happy. Oh, and this guy's pretty much finished the battle pass with that Black Panther card back. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. We're a ways off ourselves. Alright, no turn 2. It's okay. That's the big thing with this deck is you need to fill the deck out with big cards. Then you also need some consistent cycle cards for Lockjaw. So you just hope you can draw in the right order with this deck. That's a big thing. So I like getting Thor out here. I think I like getting Thor out here just to get Mjolnir in the deck. The other option is Dracula, and next turn then we have options. But I like getting Mjolnir in the deck for Lockjaw. Okay, we get Jane Foster too, so it's a potential play line. This might be a game where we just actually don't play, we actually just don't play. Well, we might not play Lockjaw this game, I'm thinking. We have Jane Foster next turn. We can slam on that location. There's a lot we can do here. Not really sure what this guy was doing. He moved Nightcrawler. Bifrost is going to move everything over. So he's locked himself out of this location, essentially. I'm sure he didn't want to do. He did also give us a Widow's Bite. So we can actually Lockjaw Widow's Bite this turn, which is pretty good in itself. We roll the dice with this. If we just Jane Foster and Widow's Bite, we well, I mean, he didn't really lock himself out of the location. I guess we give him the benefit of the doubt that he was playing for New York here. I think let's go ahead and do this. We can do some Magneto stuff on the final turn, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we got to guess a Zola here. We got to guess he's doing a Zola. So, which means we do need to win the Bifrost location. Which we absolutely can. Is there any way for us to disrupt him? What we're doing here. I think we leave this Dracula and we just give it the best shot to succeed here. And we go for this. He gets 16 on this. He moves something, gets 16 here, 16 here. We win mid if he does that with Zola. And we also win this. Well, assuming we win this. You could also make sure of it with this, but okay, so if he Zolas, he's going to move one thing here. He's going to move lots of things here. I think we've locked down this location. And I think this is our best play because if he only moves one thing, potentially get ourselves in trouble. Alright, let's go ahead and do this. Alright, so he does just move the one thing. So minimum power we can get here is, yeah, we wrap this one up by predicting the Zola play, which was pretty helpful there. To me. And we roll the we roll the Infinite anyways for the cherry on top. I mean, any roll there would have got us the victory, but just the cherry on top there with the Infinite. Very nice, very nice. And we kick on again, and we have New York with this one. We have Lockjaw, Jubilee. We have the nuts here. We have an awesome hand here for Lockjaw. So that's you love to see that. We just keep skipping until turn 3, and then we have Jubilee turn 4. Kind of go crazy. We hope we don't draw into any other big stuff. We can draw into our small stuff. Okay, we're drawing all our big stuff now, but that's okay. We can lock out here potentially. We can also roll this turn, which does thin our deck a little bit. I'm not sure that we have to with Jubilee though next turn. He might actually beat us in Hulla with discard cards because they are definitely big rolls. So I think I'm just going to go for New York here. He's probably never going to move Morbius out of this lane. We would probably can safely assume that. Okay, let's go ahead and roll Jubilee. And do we want to roll Wasp as well? I think let's leave the space just in case. Sandman. So we absolutely should have rolled Wasp that turn. Magneto is going to pull those two across. Okay, interesting. Interesting. What do we roll into here? And Chavez. So we got some big rolls there. I think this could be a skip. This turn might actually be a skip. We just have to think, can he beat us here? We really do wish we would have played Wasp last turn. Other players we Jubilee, potentially. Or we just Wasp, I guess. Just got to think about how many cards we got left in our deck. We got 3. We can start splitting to another location, but I don't think we're getting any more than 20 power anyways. I think we skip and we go Infinite here. Okay. We were going to go after Hala anyways, so unless he can get... He can stack the power here, which he definitely might be able to do. Is this cheeky? He can only play 1 card, right? But he can move things. So I guess the best card that he has here is Hela. The biggest card that he has here is Hela, so Hela middle, I guess, wins him the game. And then see what it draws. He can also move things. That's the thing that's worrying me. New York moving things. I'm going to do this. It looks really, really weird, but I think this is actually pretty cheeky. Ghost Rider pulls Hulk. We actually end up winning that one with the Ghost Rider Hulk play. We would have won either way. Straight off the bat, Tinker's Workshop. And we have Sunspot at the moment. Now we can skip. We can play Sunspot and skip. If we do draw Lockjaw, we have Jubilee, which is pretty strong. So usually I'd hold Sunspot for Lockjaw, but because we have Jubilee and we have Tinkerers to get some power out, I like this play. And this deck is, if this isn't the funnest deck, I don't know what is. This deck is so fun. Just high rolly, you know, Lockjaw decks or high roll kind of decks in general just make for a ton of fun. I'm loving it. I'm loving these decks. All right, Sinister London is an interesting one. Jubilee is looking pretty juicy over there next turn. We'll just go ahead and skip here. So, Sinister London's great for his Patriot plays for sure. Now we can just high roll here. We just YOLO it out and see what we pull. It's kind of cool. We can Dracula. We have a decent hand for Dracula at the end. I don't mind this. There's a bit of a YOLO, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so he's absolutely got the nuts here. He just needs to be able to spread his power across the board, and he'll be in a really good spot. And we roll Lockjaw over there, so that's interesting in itself. We can set up this. This play looks pretty interesting. The other plays we just skip, and we just go Infinite last turn on Sinister London. Which, you know what, isn't a bad play. But we're playing this Lockjaw deck. We're going to roll this. We're going to see what we can do with this deck right now. If he gets a Onslaught last turn, we're in a little bit of... actually, the Blue Marvel is actually probably even better for him. He only has one vanilla minion middle. Okay, so what we can do here is we do this, and we do Magneto. I think this is the play. We go Mjolnir, and we go Magneto. We call it a day. I think that's going to be it. We might be able to win these 2 locations. We'll see how he's able to get this out. We also might high roll here with Dracula. Otherwise, we still potentially win. We'll have to see. Onslaught here actually doesn't do all that much for him. It like kind of does, but it also doesn't. Like a Hulk would be huge for him here. But let's see. Let's roll the dice. I don't know. That's the fun with this deck. That's the fun with this deck for sure. Ultron. Ultron's a super interesting one. Okay, so we gotta roll Infinite here. Okay, and then we double roll. We get the Jane Foster, and then we get the Infinite. That was awesome. What a fun game. This guy absolutely high rolled with his draws with Mystique, Patriot in that order, Blue Marvel. He had a huge final turn, but the high roll comes up trumps. All right, so that's it for the gameplay with this Lockjaw high roll deck. As you can see in the games, lots of different play lines and decisions to be made, as well as like the adrenaline rush of having that RNG and trying to hit those high roll cards for sure. I love this style of deck. It includes some of my favorite cards in the game and is definitely one to try out as you progress your way into Pool 3 and unlock some of these cards as well. That's wrapping us up for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really helps us out and we'd love to have you on board. All right, I'm going to take off, and until the next one, I'll see you then.